Okay.
We're good? Oh,
yeah, we're good.
03 mark, right on time. So can you all see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
All right, awesome. So I'll jump right into it. So to start you all with something light, I'll briefly talk about the new feature. We've just deployed, I think it was Friday or sometime this week, and we're calling it the database viewer. So so I'm in a Deepnote project here, and I have a BigQuery integration created and connected to my project. And there's a new button over here, view, that basically lets you, when you click it, basically lets you browse your database. In this case, since it's BigQuery, the datasets and the underlying tables. So I can click on dataset subspace analytics. That has two tables, and I can basically just drill down into the structure, check out the individual tables, and inside the table, the individual columns and their data types. Yeah, so obviously this is very useful when you don't yet know what you want to query before you actually start writing your query. And we have filtering in here built in. So if you know you're looking for, let's say something like latitude, I can filter in lat, and I can see the exact columns in my whole database that have have this substring. Yeah, that's basically it. This is the first version of the feature. The traditional use case is that you're new to some certain data set or database. You want to browse it a little bit first, and then when you're ready, you can create your SQL block and start typing your select. In this case, I would say I want to query something from the subspace analytics data set. So I'll just type sub, and I get the autocomplete here. Yeah, I can choose something like the census tracts. And obviously, I could filter in by the columns, something like that, right? So this is the SQL block is not a new feature. Probably don't need to go over that. Yeah, so this is a quick overview. So right now, this works with BigQuery databases or BigQuery integrations, and with Postgres integrations. We obviously want this to work with everything, but we wanted to get this out as soon as possible. We just need to implement the code for getting the database structure for the remaining of the integrations. And the plan with this feature obviously is to allow you to not just look at the structure, but even be able to list, to actually look at the contents of a table, for example. So maybe show you the first few items, or even let you browse the whole thing here within Deepnote outside of a notebook, let's say. So that's kind of where we want this to be headed. Yeah, so that's about it for my quick demo. Please feel free to shoot any questions. I'd love to answer them. Oh, there's lots of things happening in chat, so let's go and check that out. Yeah, MindsDB. Looking forward to that. All right, we're getting so all right. Any questions concerning this feature? We have a lot on our schedule, it seems. There's tunneling, there's apps, so I don't want to take up.
No, I don't think there's tunneling today.
Oh, so what's the ngrok feature? I've been mentioned.
Oh yeah. Well, let's not let the cat out of the bag yet. But yeah.
Okay. just
I won't. Yeah. A little bit.
A teaser.
We can give a teaser, no? Without.
Yeah, sure.
Just if it's been brought up, we can at least mention it, no?
Sure.
All right. Anyways, before we move on to other features, yeah, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What other things you would love to see here in the database viewer? Whether you want to see your tables, or also, whether you care about stuff like table relationships, foreign keys, primary keys. This is obviously we want to make this as full-featured as possible, but your feedback would definitely help us prioritize. So if there's anything that comes to mind in terms of what would be the most useful thing for us to add, I'd love to hear that.
Thanks, Shimon.
All right, so do try it out, and if you have any feedback, you always know you can post to our community. Would love to see any feedback regarding this or other things, and we're there to answer it and to fulfill your wishes. Cool. All right. So I think
Awesome.
that's it for me. It was great seeing you all. I might have to check out early from this meeting today because I'll need to go bathe my 1-year-old. So it's getting a tad late over here. Great seeing you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Have a good rest of the evening.
All right. You too.
See ya.
Enjoy. Bye bye.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we want to tease the tunneling now? You think?
I mean, I thought we could mention it in 1 or 2 sentences. To be honest, I'm not the best to explain it, but you can also mention it at the end. I don't know.
Sure. Maybe I'll just mention it quickly now. First of all, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not the best at explaining it either. But I think someone's mic might be unmuted. Thanks. Basically, it's like you can, like if you're using Streamlit, you have to spin up like a web server to actually go there. And it's that's very difficult to do in a notebook. Same with like generating or going to like if you're using Great Expectations and you want to build their data docs, you have to kind of go to, you have to actually have a web service running for that. And that's very annoying in a notebook. And we would normally have to use ngrok to do that. But as far as I understand, the engineers are working on a way of doing that very easily inside of Deepnote. So things like Dash, Streamlit, Great Expectations, TensorBoard, anything that requires a web service will work, and you won't have to fuss about with ngrok anymore. So if there's another engineer that can explain that like in more detail, feel free.
Also, we'll probably present it in maybe even the next new in Deepnote, actually.
Yeah, and I think you said everything that was needed. So that's it. TensorBoard will be supported. So.
Yep. Okay, cool. Yeah, okay, so let's move on. So the outline is we're basically going to talk about the referral program now, which is pretty straightforward. Let me just show you here how it works. So basically, we've got a referral program now where you can send a link. So if you go to like your dashboard and your personal project under settings, you have now this new thing. You can click refer a friend. And basically how it works is you can send a link to whoever, or you can type their email address or one or more email addresses. And if that person, the recipient, signs up for Deepnote, they click on that link, they sign up for Deepnote, they get 20 hours pro machine, 20 hours on a pro machine for free. And not only that, but the person who sent the invite, so like let's say me in this case, I also get 20 pro hours, 20 hours on the pro machine just for making that referral. So, and let me show you like how it looks if you're the person who clicks on the link and signs up for Deepnote. So you can see I've actually referred a person here. Can you see this new screen now with Jakob's face on it in this YouTube video? Can you see this? Okay, yep. So this is just like some fake user. And now if I go to change my machine, you can see I've got some resources on the standard machine, but I also have now 20 free hours on a pro machine. So that's pretty cool. And likewise, because I made the referral, if I go to, let's see, I go to just my own personal project and I go to my machine, I also have 20 free hours on the Pro machine. So yeah, that's how it works. It's pretty straightforward, but we think it's pretty neat. Are there any questions about that?
Abid had a question there. I'll quickly answer it, but you can also.
For a month.
Yeah, maybe I can answer this. So, previously, everything that we were kind of allocating to people were monthly. Even the free hours in standard hardware are monthly. So it recreates, your 40 hours pool or whatever every month. But this is just extra. This is total. So you get 20 hours and that's it. Then you can invite another person and get 20 extra hours as well.
Sweet. Thank you. Okay, cool. You guys want to talk about apps now? That sounds fun. Let's do it. Let's make an app actually. Okay, so first I want to just tell you a bit about why this is kind of a deal, like why this is sort of a game changer for me personally, and like what I used to do for a living and why this would have been absolutely indispensable had it existed at the time. But so I used to work in a school board, and the core challenge there was building reports. So a lot of our data came in CSVs. And before I got there, people were basically wrangling all of their data in Excel, building all their charts in Excel, and then building their reports and their, all their charts and their narrative in Word. So it was like this horrible workflow. So I came in and it was a natural fit to use the Jupyter Notebook for that, because we could do all of our data wrangling and visualization in one report. We could automate those reports, send them out to principals. And it was like this really good fit because the data and the viz and the narrative were all in the notebook. It was perfect, right? The problem was that what I was really lacking, and I never really found a great solution for this, was that there was still a need to turn those reports, these sort of documents, into apps or dashboards or something that was easier to consume for, let's say, principals or teachers or non-technical users, let's say, where they didn't need a long vertical report. They just wanted something with a nice layout where they could, toggle some checkboxes and start basically inspecting their data, interacting with their data. And in order to overcome that gap, right, we solved the automation gap, but in order to overcome the sort of presentation layer app gap, let's say, we tried so many different things. Like I tried Dash, I tried Shiny, I tried Power BI, I tried Tableau. I was using Anvil, which is like a web app development platform for front end, back end, all in Python. And it's very powerful, but I was like building dashboards in that. You can also kind of cheat by using concatenated charts. So whatever library you use, you can glue a bunch of charts together, let's say in a row, and you can sort of fake this sort of dashboard. But there's limitations to all these things, and there's overhead to all these things because I have to leave the notebook for one, so it slows my workflow down. And then there's all these other complications like hosting and additional license fees. And if you're using Altair for your dashboarding, well, there's a huge limitation there because you can't drive arbitrary computation. So we really needed a way of staying in the notebook and making apps is basically what I'm saying. And so now this is what we're working towards solving with Deepnote now. So just to give you a bit of a background on why we think this is so important. So let me just move some Zoom stuff out of the way. Okay, so I've got this notebook and I'm just going to make an app out of it just to show you how it would work. And I should also say that there's like a bit of a caveat here, like it should probably be considered like a beta feature right now, and we're definitely looking for feedback. So do expect that there will be improvements to how this works, but it is functional, it is powerful, and you can see where we're going with it. So I have this notebook. It's basically running stats simulations. So you can imagine like a stats teacher or computer science professor or something wanting to use something like this to demonstrate some concept. So if I go to share, you can now go to this so-called publishing editor. So I'm going to click on that, and you can basically choose an article layout, which is something that you guys have all seen before. It's more vertical, and a dashboard layout, which allows you to arrange things on a grid. So maybe I'll just click this create a dashboard button here and show you how this new interface works. And again, like we would love your feedback on how to improve things as well, because it's definitely not perfect, but it's definitely powerful. So basically how it works is there's like two panes, and on the left, you can see the notebook. Okay, so this is just what I showed you before. And on the right, we have this grid where we can place elements, or we can place cells basically, and you can choose the cells from the left that you want to move to the right. Okay, so let's just take only what we want from the left and move it to the right. And so suppose I want the widgets. Okay, I'll just click this little plus sign, and then now you can see this with, I call it a widget, but this cell basically moves over, and then here this cell moves over, and I want this visualization, and they just get added to the left, or they get added to the right. And then I'm going to add these two, and I'm going to add this one. Now, if you want to remove something, that's okay. Then you can just hit the minus sign and it takes it out. But let's keep those in, and I won't bring anything else in. Okay, so this is me taking a subset of the cells from the left and bringing them to the right. And now I can basically start arranging them, right? So one thing I like to do is, and I'm sure this will get smoothed out later, but they take up like the full width, which I don't love right now, but let me just show you how I do it just to create some space. I'm going to do that for all of these widgets, or all of these cells. And these ones, the big ones, they get kind of sticky, but anyway, you get the idea. And then once this is done, we'll be able to start arranging them. Okay. So let's see. So that's fine where it is. I want to move. I'll just grab this little move tab, bring this up here, grab this one, bring it over here. Let's see.
Seems like it would be cool to be able to just highlight all of your different cells and kind of make them all the same size at the same time.
Sure would. I agree 100%. I feel that pain point too, and it would be cool cool like you would see in like the design programs where you could just click and drag, and it would kind of like lasso a bunch of them, and you could move them around or something like that. But I'm sure that will be added shortly. I'm sure something, because that's definitely a pain point, is actually moving them around is a bit annoying. Okay, so I've got a decent layout. Okay, so let's just publish it and see how it works. I'm going to open it now. So there you go. And there's a kernel running behind this, so I can make changes to these drop downs, and it's running the notebook essentially and driving all of these charts. So my understanding is that the first time you run it, it actually takes a while. Like I don't know if like the machine is warming up or something, but subsequent runs are usually faster. So we're also aware that this startup time has to be improved for sure here. But anyway, there you go. Let me change these things. Then the charts change too. Trying to think what else there is to say about it. Let's just check the chat for a sec. We can't use Figma shortcuts yet, but that's definitely a program we would get a lot of inspiration for sure. Images still don't work in the dashboard editor. Yes, this is true.
It works now. We just released the fix like 15 minutes ago. So yeah.
Okay, sweet. Do you think it'll be like actually live? Let's try it. Let's see. Okay, it's coming. See, because this one doesn't work.
Can you re-add it?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, then maybe some additional fixes will be needed.
Yep.
Can you go over maybe the drop downs at the top? You have like just looking layout, visibility, allow duplication, what the differences
Sure.
of those are?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so the dashboard gives you like this grid view where you can arrange things like horizontally or any which way you like. And then if I switch it to article view, everything will just be like a vertical, essentially like the notebook.
Okay.
And then if you publish this, then again, it's still interactive, like it still has the kernel behind it and everything. So it doesn't change the functionality. It's just a layout. And then these are basically the permissions. So how you want these things to be viewed, you can, just like, for example, you could share this only within your team, or you could make it so it's unpublished and no one can see it, and so on and so forth. The toggle button here will prevent people from duplicating this project when they see it on your public profile. And yeah, and then you have just publish the changes and open the actual app. It's just.
So what's the open button actually do? So like, how is that going to differ from this?
Yeah, so the open button actually launches it in your public profile. So this is like where we have like, everybody has like a public profile where you can publish all of your notebooks and now your apps and everything. So when you open, it just opens the project up as it's published.
Cool, thanks.
Yep,
is that the thing you would share with your head teachers historically? That link there to the app?
Yep, correct. I would share. I would definitely not share the link to the notebook, because that's something that I would want my team to use because they're interacting with code and they're more technical. But whoever I just want to be able to give them access to changing these widgets and looking at their visualizations, yes, this would be like the end thing I would want a teacher to consume, let's say, or some end user. Yes, I would send them this link. Absolutely. I mean, and of course, if you could share these things with whoever you want, your internal team as well. If you build nice analytics dashboard to, look at revenue details for your company or something, then of course you could share this with whoever.
So basically, to see if I got it right, so this app kind of creator, its dashboard feature just allows you to kind of take a subset of your notebook and kind of rearrange it in different horizontal ways, unlike just straight vertical ways like the normal notebook.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the main difference.
I think that's the main difference is layout, but also, related to that is the fact that there is a kernel actually running in the background as well. So it's like
cool.
Layout and the interactivity of it. Yeah. I don't know a way of adding a license to the app natively, but that's a good idea. And can we change the background? Changing the background is a good idea. When do you imagine using that? Can we change the background image color?
I was just thinking of it as a customizability feature, just is an interesting thing. It wouldn't serve any purpose, but in some cases, I mean, actually, no, I can't imagine if a place where we need contrast in the notebook, but it's just something I guess people could use.
Abid's asking for like compute limitations and processing. JZ, are you on this call still? Do you know if there's any difference between?
Right now, the difference is that it doesn't support your custom environment, your Docker file, or init notebook. So if you need to install some additional things to the runtime environment that's default for Deepnote, then you need to do it right in the notebook and in the cell. You don't need to move this cell into the dashboard, into the published thing, but it needs to be in the notebook that you are publishing. So this is the main difference, but we are working on basically allowing the kernel that runs under your interactive dashboard be the same as the one in the notebook. But right now, since you can So why it's not supported yet? The reason is, you can share your dashboard on Twitter, and if you have 1 million followers, maybe 5,000 people open this app, and we spin a separate pod for all of these. So if you change the input cell or whatever, it's it's unique for every person looking at this page. So we still have to figure out the pros and cons of migrating all of these custom environments, all of the Docker files and the cache to all of the basically nodes in our cluster. But this will be supported at some point. And also one more thing is also integrations. This is also related to the custom environments and Docker files and everything. So right now it's only the notebook, but you can of course, everything that's right now in integrations or Docker file, you can also put it in notebook, but eventually we'll release an update with the perf improvements for this.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the fact that integrations don't work means that SQL cells, as far as I remember, that means that those SQL cells won't run. So if the app kind of requires them to function properly, then the SQL cells won't actually run, and you'll get an error. So we're aware of it. It's kind of one of the biggest requests at the moment is to kind of add those integrations. So we're working on that. And another thing, I don't know, Alan, if you mentioned this, sorry if you did, there's a 30-second run limit.
I know I
did
didn't
you already
mention
talk about that?
No.
So if you, let's say you're changing one of these input cells that Alan has there. So whenever you do that, obviously it's going to rerun the notebook. And if it takes longer than 30 seconds to run that notebook, then it's going to time out and it's going to error. And that's for the same reason that Jakub mentioned. Every time somebody opens this app, it's going to spin up a machine, which means that, Deepnote is paying for compute time on that machine. It's free for you guys and it's free for anybody opening the app, but Deepnote has to pay for somebody to be able to run this app. So we don't want somebody running an app that takes, 1 hour to run for some reason, and therefore, just starts eating up some compute time. Needless to say, also, it makes sense for you to make your apps run as fast as possible, because you don't want an app that takes 40 seconds to make a plot. You want it to take 5 seconds so it responds quickly and people can use it. And there are some tricks about that. I don't know if Alan will talk about them, about, caching your data and stuff like that. So you don't need to do all these complex data transformations in real time. You can instead cache them so that every day you use the schedule notebooks, and every day it kind of replenishes them. I don't know if Alan will talk about that on his own.
No,
that would be awesome to talk about that. And what do you mean by cache them? You mean clear the cache? So
just to make sure I'm not stepping, Alan, do you have something about that?
No, not really.
Okay. So Chris, I guess, do you know a little bit about scheduling notebooks?
No, that would be awesome to talk about that too.
Okay, I don't know. I don't think we have time to completely dig into scheduling notebooks, but you can open a notebook and you can schedule it to run weekly or daily. And it's very useful. I don't know, Alan, if you can just quickly show just what it looks like, just so, Chris can at least visualize it. Yeah, so if you open that and you put schedule notebook, then you'll get an option to schedule that. Now you can schedule the same notebook that you're publishing as an app, and therefore it will kind of run on a schedule. But what I mean by caching, though, is that, for example, you have notebook A that does all your data processing, and it reads the data from SQL and everything, and you schedule that. So every day you have kind of the latest data that you want. And then notebook B is published as an app. And all notebook B does is it reads a CSV that was generated in notebook A. And it reads that CSV, which is super quick, right? That takes half a second or less, and then just displays the plots. And because notebook A did all the processing already on a daily basis, you don't need to worry about notebook B, which is an app, taking longer than 30 seconds to run. And therefore you can get quick reactive applications for the people who are going to be viewing these dashboards.
Cool.
Hey, that's a pretty good tip.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So you're just using notebook A to do the computation on a scheduled basis, and notebook B is periodically reading from it to drive the app. Is that correct?
And notebook, yeah. It's, and I think we can do a better job of, making this process easier, right? For example, in our documentation, etc. But essentially, you're just caching this data just so you don't need to read it in live every time. You want to just write it as a CSV or as a JSON file, or write it to a one of our shared data sets integrations. So then you can reuse it in another project or another notebook.
One more performance tip, if I may, is if your data is not that large, if it's, let's say, a couple of megabytes, maximum couple of hundreds of megabytes, you can save this data into your cell output into JavaScript, and then use Plotly or Altair to basically inject everything into the front end into the app, and then use this Plotly or Altair cell, which is much faster to run, much faster to update when you change some inputs or some select boxes. But this is limited to having all the data pre-calculated. Yeah.
So you would actually have to write JavaScript to do that?
Not really JavaScript, but if you need to feed this data into Plotly or Altair, so it needs to be kind of pre-calculated before you create the output cell.
Right. Yeah, because like I would say that's in a way that's kind of part of what I was doing when I was at the school board too, was just using the data that was basically sitting behind an Altair chart, because there's also widgets in those charts as well. Like in those libraries, you can also use widgets, but then everything has to be pre-calculated, and you can't just drive arbitrary computations, right?
Yes. But so the difference when to use these, let's say, front-end computations, which Altair and Plotly does, is the difference is when these don't need warm-up time. These recalculations, these redrawings are done on the front end. So this is much faster. It doesn't need to use the actual pod that we spin up for you, and so on and so on. But if you really need to be connected to something in the background, or need to do more Python transformations, then
yeah, or if you need the output of one process to drive something else. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I have a question. So if you let's say you have an input cell that's the value 20, and then I change it to 20 again and I hit enter, does it, even though the parameters haven't changed, will it still rerun everything again, or does it somehow cache unchanged values so that you know what I'm saying? Like sort of like what Streamlit does.
Yeah, the caching is there right now. We still rerun that in the background, but we show you the output right away. And this is what we are kind of optimizing right now.
Okay.
But basically, the current cache works. All the parameters of all the input cells are sent to the pod. The calculation is, or whatever you have there, is being run, and then the answer is being sent to the front end. But if it's the same, then you have your answer already.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean,
can I ask you one other quick question?
Yeah, we've got time.
So if you go back to the split screen where you had their notebook on the left and the app on the right, I was just curious. So any of the, I doubt it, but any of the navigations on the far left, I'm guessing those don't change when you're in this kind of dual pane mode.
No.
Right.
And then they actually take you right up.
Cool. And then last question, also probably no difference, but if you're editing so your whole notebook is on the left there, vertical one. So changing this is not going to be changing the actual IPython file or notebook. So if you make any edits on this side, is it going to be altering your original notebook at all?
Yes.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah, it is your notebook.
Oh, it actually is your notebook. Okay, so it's not a separate copy or anything.
No.
Cool. Okay, thanks.
Yep, no problem. Great question, actually.
And one more update. So we mentioned the interactivity behind this and the way that you can lay out the things. But one more change that we did in the background is that whenever you publish stuff, whenever you click the publish changes, we create a snapshot on our backend. So once you start changing your notebook here or in the default notebook environment and start making changes in the cells, in the outputs, rerunning stuff and so on and so on, the published thing is still the locked published thing when you published it. So you can make changes, and unless you publish again, the new changes are not published in the notebook. If you rerun your stuff, or if you schedule your notebook to rerun, then yes, it will change. But if you kind of change it, then it will not change. if you change your titles or stuff like that, it lives separately. And yes, yeah. If it takes longer than 30 seconds, then it times out.
That's great.
So really, you could kind of, as you're creating your notebook, you could be in this dual pane mode and just like you have your notebook on your left, you're creating, and then you're kind of like pulling pieces to the right as like you don't have to obviously wait till you have your whole notebook done like you did in this example case.
No, yeah, you could build it up iteratively. Sure.
Right.
Is that how you imagine yourself doing it? I'm just curious about
your
workflow. Your workflow might be.
Yeah, I'm seeing it. It seems like, if I have this kind of open while I'm using Notebook, I could be pulling stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, I want this cell over. I don't see any reason to kind of wait till I'm done, doing it vertically to kind of, be able to.
Yeah, I suppose. I guess like. That's interesting to hear. I would probably get all the content there and then work on the arrangement of things at the end. But I don't think it matters either way, whatever
Sure.
fits for your workflow.
Well, I haven't actually done it. You're right. So maybe once I try it once, you might be right.
Well, I don't even know if it's a matter of right and wrong. That's just the first thing that occurred to me. It might just be a personal thing. But the other thing that like would make me want to do that right now is that I like having more real estate. And in this one, I don't have as much real estate, and that bothers me. So, but I'm sure we'll fix that at some point. If you could toggle back and forth between them, then that might inspire me more to build it like piecemeal. But that again, that's just my initial take on it.
Good call. Yeah.
Cool. We got a few more minutes left if anyone has any questions, or if they're, that's actually a good point, Abid. I thought the same thing. So Abid's asking if we can add a button. I actually asked for the same thing. I think that's a good idea. We don't have a native button yet, but I would like to do that because, for example, so I've got these widgets, but sometimes I don't want to run this entire simulation once I change just one drop-down menu. Maybe I want to set 3 or 4 parameters and then click run. And then and this way I can kind of set 3 or 4 things and then run it all at once. So I would love a button, to be honest. Unless I'm missing some obvious workflow, that would be something I would like as well. I don't really know a workaround for that.
No, the way I've seen it implemented in some ways where you have a checkbox and you can decide whether you want the app to rerun automatically, or you want to let the app, or you want to manually let it run once you've set everything you want to set up.
Yeah, good point. That's basically the same kind of idea. Yeah, I would love that. Does anyone know, like, for any engineers that might be on, or Ito, if you know do you know when the integrations so that SQL cells will work? Do you know like what a timeline might be on, like something like that?
So that's always hot territory, whether I can, commit to engineering launches because they always get angry if I do it. I don't know. Jakub can stop me, but I know it's kind of one of the first things that we're working on. So I won't give a day or week. You guys kind of know our pace. So if this is kind of one of the first things we're working on when it comes to improving the apps, then it's probably going to be sooner rather than later.
Mm.
But I mean, we're aware that it's not a blocker for everybody. And especially if you do this caching thing that I told you about, which I think you should, regardless of whether you're using SQL cells or not, like the apps shouldn't be doing too much data processing. That should be the workload of another notebook. You shouldn't there might be some very specific corner cases where you're blocked by it, but realistically you shouldn't be too blocked by not being able to access your integrations, because most of the reasons you need to access them is for processing, and most of the processing can be done in a different notebook.
And those notebooks are both in the same project, right?
And those notebooks are both in the same project. That's where, things start to get tricky. If you wanted to do a notebook in project A and a notebook in project B, and you did your processing in project A and you wanted to access it in an app in project B, then you would need an integration, because you would need to use our shared data set, or you need to use our Amazon S3 bucket where you would store your CSV and your JSON files or whatever. And then you wouldn't be able to do that. So there are that's an example of kind of an edge case. For now, put two notebooks maybe in the same project. Do that where, we usually encourage having one notebook per project, but this is kind of the case where you probably want to have two.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we go to 1:45, right? So I can stay on for a few more minutes if anyone wants to talk about anything like Deepnote related, even if it's not these particular topics. I could stay on for a couple minutes, but other than that, thank you so much for being here. And this is a great discussion.
One last thing, which I'm sure Alan will mind me mentioning, is that Alan and the rest of the team we're all kind of organizing an education workshop. Now, most of you guys are not educators here, but you might know of people who are teaching data science, teaching statistics, either to students or to coworkers, and you're trying to kind of improve data literacy in a team or among students or among whatever organization you're working with. So if you're interested in that, let me maybe send the link. It's education webinar. So I'll drop the link in the chat. It's right here. Take a look, sign up. If you're not interested, but somebody else would be interested, send it to them. It's going to be a 2-hour event. They can show up to whichever talks or panels they're interested in. And there's some pretty great speakers doing some pretty cool things with Deepnote, without Deepnote, and trying to kind of find new ways to teach data literacy and data science. So link is in the chat. Just feel free to sign up.
And Dan will be there.
Oh yeah, and Dan will be there, of course. Dan is one of the speakers. He's you're the second speaker, aren't you?
Third.
The third speaker. Okay. So if anything, come support Dan.
Awesome. Thanks, Ito. Well, thanks everyone. Stay on for a few more minutes. Appreciate all the thoughtful questions.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.
See ya.
If you have a minute or two, I got a question for you.
Yeah, of course.
So I just signed up for that education webinar. So I am doing exactly that, teaching data science. So I'm just going to be introing the next few days. So Deepnote to some students. So I was just wondering, any tips, tricks, like kind of like what are some, as I've never introed it to students. So what would you do? Or what are kind of some key facets that I should make sure that I talk about or don't talk about?
Okay, so when I give a demo to Deepnote, the sort of 5-second pitch is, it's like a Google Docs, but Jupyter Notebooks. So if your students are familiar with Google Docs, that will at least get them in the ballpark, and they'll start thinking about collaboration, because of course part of the allure of Deepnote is that people can collaborate in real time. So when I demo it, I usually will show, you could show two notebooks, one side by side, or you could share a link to your students, and then they can just hop in the notebook, and right away they'll see their classmates typing in at the same time. You can see the avatars following people around, and immediately you're like, oh, I get it. It's like we can all code at the same time. So that's like a really nice entry point, because they'll feel at home. And so that's the one thing. The second thing is comments. So we have a nice little commenting system, which again is very similar to like other cloud platforms. So this is particularly nice for a professor or a teacher, because you can now comment on your classmate, on your students' work, and so they'll immediately see the value in that. And of course, if they share projects with their classmates, then they can also give feedback in that way. So this is nice. And while there are many features, some of the core ones are like teams, basically. So you, as a teacher, you can have a team, and you can have your students as the team, essentially, where you're the owner, you're the teacher, and then you can have notebooks that are exercises and notebooks that are lectures, or the content that you want to be view only. And so your students can actually view your content if you wanted to use Deepnote as an actual presentation platform. And then when you want to share exercises with them, they also have notebooks that they can edit and duplicate into their space. So it's very similar to how, it's very similar to how like a Google Doc thing would work. So for example, if I'm your student and you're teaching me some stats lecture, that's okay. Yeah. Sorry. No problem. No problem. If I'm your student and I'm watching you go through some lesson, right, I can actually be looking at the notebook, and so you can see my avatar where I'm actually viewing, but I won't be able to change the cells or the content or anything. So maybe you have some app, or maybe you've got some code that you're showing, and I won't be able to actually change it. But since I actually, as a student, I can see that notebook and it's view only, I can just hit duplicate, and it will duplicate that notebook as it is into my space, and then I could work with it. Or of course, you could share a separate notebook that's exercises and give people the appropriate permissions.
Cool. So very similar, like G Drive stuff. Yeah.
So similar,
make a copy, and then you can edit it. Yeah.
Make a copy, and they'll probably feel really comfortable with that interface too, because people just see that everywhere now.
We're used to that, right?
Yeah. And the other thing is, I don't know how familiar they are with SQL, but one of the things that makes Deepnote such a smooth thing is that not only can you write, let's say, your like Python, let's say, but you can also connect to SQL. And then I think you saw a bit of that today, where you can write pure SQL and it's all auto-completed and syntax highlighted and everything. And so you can, if there are any data sources that you need to connect to, you can actually write SQL. You can even query CSV files that are sitting in your file system directly. So if your students are learning SQL, like that's a really smooth experience. But I think the teams and the collaboration and the comments are probably the easiest entry point. Yeah.
I mean, what you just showed us today too, with creating the new dashboard, it seems like a pretty simple thing to kind of show them that they might pique their interest too.
I also think that they'll be really interested in the idea that they can publish their work, right? So student comes up with a great app, or they're super pumped about their visualization, they can hit share, and now that's like out in the world, and it's like one button click. As a student, that would have been great for me, because you get proud of certain projects that you do and you want to share them. So that's also something. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate it.